Welcome on in, citizens of Dominion. Let's try that again. Welcome on in, citizens of Dominion. Welcome back to From Day 1, Part 3 of Day 30. Likely coming out just as the new year dawns, both in Dominion and around the world. More than happy GC Hero Wars here to have you. We have a new Art Bell Midnight in the Desert ready, locked, and loaded. But as always, let's go to our mailbag first and see what we have since the last time you and I have been together in part 2. Six, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 19, 20, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, 30, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 41, 2, 3, 4, 3. 43 fireworks shut off, so 4,300 Winterfest coins as a result. Let's see what we have in the artifacts. And of course, we also still have tonight's piece of the Winterfest saga. But before we get to that, this one, Waiting for the Holiday, is on its way out as of, I think it's 2 a.m. UTC tomorrow. This one will leave. The replacement mission, Winter's Tale, will come in to take its place. I believe this task disappears and the Rising Star task disappears. In replacement, you will get a opening artifact chest, hence why I've been telling you guys to keep your keys. Keys. And you'll get a different adventure, which I think is going to go and replace the Time of Heroism, which will actually be getting adventure chest rather than just joining adventures. So if there's any left that you want to do, for instance, us, we'd love to get our extra 25 plus 8, 33 missions complete to pick up the 2,400 bubbles. Make sure you do them in the next 24 hours or less. Winterfest story as we were as of yesterday. Orion basically following up the story of the misplaced gift that had Bitey in it. Yes, that's surprising. I looked it up. Is the actual name they've given the little pet dog floater bubble thingy of Iris. And Iris wanting to basically attack the archfiend by herself. And Orion saying that they needed one more hero to accomplish the mission. So tonight, we pick up the story, Winterfest 2021. Of course, this is the story loads. Courtesy of our good friends over at Nexters. Just about ready. The progress bar is basically loaded, just waiting for the actual. There we go. And lo and behold, the extra person is Isaac, of all people. Well, I guess Chaba's off stage. I'm going to rush straight into battle alongside all these new people. Okay, my Iris voice isn't doing well tonight. Get down! With one swift, elegant movement, I'll teleport the new tree back to where it belongs. It's no big deal, but I'd rather you not get in the way. There's Jabba. Hold on a minute. Shouldn't we... never mind. Think we should leave both trees here? I could engineer an exoskeleton of sorts for Jabba's costume, so he could stand here for a long time. It would make for a nice tradition. We already have a nice tradition of our own. Someone tries to ruin Winterfest, then the entire year goes out of whack. Statistics indicate that last year was filled with events, discoveries, and inventions. We crafted, experimented, researched, and analyzed. Not a second passed in vain. Let's unleash the power of sorcery and trash those evildoers. Poor Chaba. Isaac just wants to make him into a lifelong, forever trade, and Chaba's like, all I want to do is eat gingerbread. So today we're going to go ahead and get some Isaac stones. There they are. Now, as a fellow YouTuber for the Game Hero Wars pointed out, there was some doubt about the first event that was going to come after Winterfest. Original reports, and I think these were actually true, was going to be that it was going to be a mostly throwaway Time of the Fearless event. I think Nexter's probably got a lot of backlash from that. And now the report is it's going to be an Elemental Synergy event. As you notice, I didn't tell you anything about collecting Hero Soul Stones for next week's Winter's Tale Part 2 of the Winterfest. But if we do get Elemental Synergy as the next event, the weekly event after Winterfest, that one does have a pretty hefty price tag of Hero Stones that it wants, making it usually a very big pay-to-play style event. Each day in the community tab, if you download and click the link, you usually can get 20 Hero Stones of the Hero of the Day. Biggest suggestion, like I've been saving certain energies and portal portions, portal charges in my mail, is that you save your Hero Stones there as well, and not open them until that Elemental Synergy event. So you can get maybe about 150 to 200 stones ahead of the ball for that event. Alright, let's see what Winterfest gifts we got. Well, we got, aren't you glad to 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 20 from Glad, 28, 32, 36 minus 1, 35 envelopes, boxes open, most of them courtesy of probably those 40 some odd fireworks shoot offs, because each one of them basically counted as 50,000 baubles on the tree. So I hate to see how high that level tree is. So let's go take a look real quick. Decorate the tree. Level 87. So yeah, that tree is quite high at the moment. So we're going to go through the presents. If there's anything of super important, I will break the deal. But in the meantime, Art Bell has been waiting long enough. I will now send you out to the Great American Southwest in Pahrump. For tonight's Art Bell, his guest is Cody Lundin. And the only thing I've written on the spine here for the topic is survival. The interview originally happened November 2nd, 2015.
From the high desert and the great American Southwest, I bid you all good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you may be in the world's 25 time zones. Each and every one covered by a blanket by this program. Midnight in the Desert. I'm Art Bell. Great to be here. We have, but as you know, 2 rules on the show. No bad language, because we have the youngsters listening, and 1 call per show only. Those are the rules. It's going to be a really, really, really interesting show tonight. So we'll get to that. I'm tempted to, just launch right into it. I'm not, though. There are a couple of things I want to call your attention to. Both are up on my website. And they're a little bit worrisome. The first we're calling the Yellowstone story, although it is not strictly, really, exactly a Yellowstone story. It's adjacent to, close. However, there are videos and still photographs of what appears to be a gigantic gash in the ground. Now, when I say gash, I mean, it's kind of like you went up to an earthquake fault somewhere and just stared at the, down a long distance as the earth has separated from itself. And that's what it looks like. It's like it was ripped apart. Now, there are some who say, oh no, it was water coming down from a bluff. You make up your own mind. You take a look and tell me. Now, there was no associated earthquake that was reported in that specific area. And you will see in the video that the gentleman points that out. We also have a second photograph I want you to look at. And this is sent to us by a listener who also was a drone operator, I would presume, or a friend of his. And it's a drone photograph of a lake. But, oh, baby, when they take this drone up over the lake and look down on it, it's like you're looking at a lake circle, like a crop circle, except it's a lake circle. It's like a petrograph. You take a look. You let me know what you think it is, but it was caught by accident by somebody with a drone. As you know, the FCC is moving to make life not much fun for us, drone owners. There was a very interesting article on theanomalous.com. I usually do find one there. And this concerns a very long study done on the controversial status of precognition and other anomalous effects, simply known as PSI. I know precognition. Personally, I know it's real. And I would love to learn more about it, and I'm sure we'll find a guest on precognition. Perhaps somebody in the scientific field who can tell us what they think's going on. I mean, there's no question about it. We're going to be talking to, I can't call myself, Cody Lundin in a few minutes, and this is probably worth a discussion with him. Whatever you want to call it, this precognition, it's an instinct, I think, in human beings. I'm not sure about that, but that is my best guess. It's like an instinct. A feeling you have that something is right or wrong, a feeling that somebody is good or bad when you meet them instantly, that kind of thing, but extended. I've had one experience in my life of precognition, so that's enough. I know it's real. Everybody else might not. I do. And they are studying it scientifically, and it certainly is worth finding out more about. Mystery and confusion surrounding the final moments of that Russian jetliner that went down. Now, they've been talking all day about the possibility of a missile or a bomb as at least a possibility. It could have been a failures, at near 30,000 feet at cruise altitude are very unlikely. Airplanes just coming apart. Yes, the tail had been worked on. I know all about that, but still unlikely. Could have been a bomb. And, by the way, ISIS is claiming credit for the downing of that plane. Now, the experts they trot out on CNN seem to think that they couldn't get a missile that high, and maybe they couldn't. Somebody else points out, well, there's mountains. Well, it was well past the mountains, so we'll just have to wait and see, of course. After a devastating loss in the 2012 presidential campaigns, the Republican Party entered a period of intense self-reflection, and they emerged, it says, with a firm promise to learn from its mistakes. The GOP vowed to avoid prolonged and vicious primaries. Well, that's history, right? I mean, we know what's going on, and none of that happened. Jeb Bush is trying to hit the reset button. He's suffering badly in polls. And his new slogan, I don't know, it doesn't excite me. I sound like the Donald, right? It doesn't excite me. But his new slogan is Jeb can fix it. Well, really? I mean, everything? Or just it, whatever it is. That's his new slogan campaign.
I'm going to start, Art, I'm going to have to break into you just for a quick second. You might want to check, those of you who do watch us from the UK, and yes, I do get a few emails from you guys, so I do know. You know, that sounds way, way, way too familiar to a pedophile's TV show slogan back in the day of Jim will fix it. No wonder why Jeb didn't do quite any decent. Alright, back to Art.
So Jeb can fix it. And I don't know. I wasn't really particularly enamored of the slogan. Jeb can fix it. All right, Cody Lundin is an internationally recognized professional in the field of primitive living skills, modern wilderness survival, and urban self-reliance training. Urban, mind you, with 26 years of hands-on teaching experience. Due to his intimate understanding of the physics, psychology, physiology of human survival, he is routinely featured as the consulting expert on real-world emergencies for national and international news outlets. He has trained private, corporate, and government agencies, thousands of students, dozens of national and international media sources in outdoor survival, primitive living skills, and urban preparedness. So those of you who thought that all the urban people would be out of luck tonight are wrong. He will be able to speak to them. Now, he'll be coming up in just a moment. I want to say one more thing. Ted Koppel, interesting, was on CNN earlier today. And it was quite an unusual segment, I must say. It turns out that Ted Koppel has taken on the issue of the grid. He believes that our internet infrastructure in America, which, he pointed out was originally designed for scientists and professors to talk to each other and exchange ideas, and now is in the hands of virtually everybody, wasn't designed to be protected. And he says that anybody, meaning nation states anyway, can bring down our grid completely. Just flat bring it down. Russia and China, he pointed out, not likely to do it because, well, we can do it too and maybe better. So the mutual assured destruction scenario of that between big nations is unlikely. However, we've got Korea, we've got the guys dressed in black in the Middle East, and they don't care about any of that. They want everything to come down. And he pointed out that if the grid went down for 2 years, and that's what he thought it would, 2 years, that in 1 year, the grid being down, only 1 in 10 in America would survive. And I know you're probably sitting out there and going, oh, come on, it just ain't so. 1 in 10 without electricity couldn't survive? Well, it's probably accurate. I'm sure it's accurate. It may even be undersaid. Might be worse than that. And I have urged people for years, beginning probably 20 years ago, just as an experiment, go outside, find the big master switch near your power meter, and turn off the electricity for your house and try and live for a day, 2 days. See how that goes. It's an interesting experiment. You all might probably not want to try, but if you do, you'll learn a lot. All right, coming up after the break, Cody Lundin. And I'm already getting tons of messages, so he's got a lot of fans out there on the internet. He did a show called Dual Survival. Maybe you saw it on the Discovery Channel. I'm Art Bell.
And again, we're muted just to prevent the copyright. As soon as they do come back to speaking, we will be back to them. Because no one here is a dancing queen.
Hillside of Midnight. From the Kingdom of Nye, this is Midnight in the Desert with Art Bell. Please call the show at 1-952-225-5278. That's 1-952-CALL ART.
Well, I guess I'll let him get away with his stutter tonight. That happens every now and then. All right, to the program. Welcome, Cody Lundin.
Hi, Art. Thanks for having me on.
It's great to have you on. Let me start out by saying I am a gigantic fan of survival shows. I have watched every single episode, not of yours, but of Naked and Afraid. So then, earlier today, I got some of your episodes, and I binge-watched them. So I know something about it.
Okay. Well, I'm ready.
Okay, good. All right. So I'm going to ask you a couple questions that weren't even down here first. And one is, in order to get it out of the way, since I have such a paranormal-oriented audience, and you have spent so much time in every kind of wilderness human could spend time in, my audience would like to know if you've seen anything weird in the wild. And by that, they mean anything just I can't explain, or anything that even was paranormal, and of course, Bigfoot.
No, to be a disappointment to some of your fans.
Okay.
I have talked to several people that have seen some bizarre stuff, but never direct an experience for myself.
Okay, all right, good answer. Thank you. Now it's out of the way. Someone else says, this is all coming from my computer, that you have a very interesting philosophy of Mother Earth.
So I wonder what they mean by that.
I don't know.
Well, so basically, I teach primitive living skills, modern survival, and preparedness, as you mentioned. And, I make my living off the planet. We all do. Not all of us are conscious of that. But so I do have, I think, a close association with the Earth, which I wish more of us did have, just because of what I do. I'm outside a lot, so I'm outside as much as I'm inside, whether that's my homestead or teaching courses or whatnot. So what they mean by that, I don't really know what they're getting at, but yeah, I'm outside a lot. So
Right.
if that's a special association, so be it.
You call yourself a hippie?
No, I don't. I think I missed that era. I like, I like heavy metal music. I don't know many hippies that like that, and I have long hair. I've had long hair ever since I was a little kid, but I don't really call myself a hippie because I don't think that's quite my era.
Well, I don't know whether I heard it in a show or that they called you that, or someone said, can a hippie and a military guy survive together? Or something. It came up in the program somewhere.
Sure, yeah, they like to call me a hippie, and a lot of people do that. So, and I've referenced that before, but no, I'm hard to pin down. You know how it is, judgments, and people look at you and they think one thing, and it might be another thing.
Sure.
So I'm sure you experienced that in your career, and I get the same as well in mine.
Absolutely. When they asked about your view on Mother Earth, I think, I think and I wondered the same thing as I watched your program. You live out in it all the time, and I know that Americans have a sort of a view, a world view about the Earth and what she is, and I wonder if part of that is in you.
I don't know. I think it's an interesting question. I think a lot of people would feel similar if they spent more time outside. And to even have you ask me that question kind of personifies what's going on, in our modern world. A lot of us don't spend a lot of time outside. And I'm not saying you have to go out in the wilderness to get refreshed by Mother Nature, for lack of a better term, but just we have our head up, where. I mean, I heard you reference before we got on the air together, the Ted Koppel thing.
Yes.
And, this is, I know that a lot of your listeners, I want to educate, and I'd like Art Bell fans to stay alive. And we're hopelessly, confined to technology, as great as it is. And so that's the point here, is we're so disassociated with the natural world and how things really work when they're unplugged, that it's a fascination with anyone who does spend time outside. It's become the non-norm. My grandparents homesteaded in South Dakota. They literally used the Homestead Act and took Indians' land, and had the sod home and the whole 9 yards. And so they spent much of their day outdoors, planting in the field, the garden, etc., and about 20% of the time indoors. And today it's the exact opposite. So to really wrap your head around that, if people spent more time outdoors and into something that was real and unplugged for a little bit, figuratively and otherwise, then if the grid did burp, it'd be a hell of a lot less scary for those.
All right. I want you to understand. I like telling the truth. I'm one of those people that you're talking about. In fact, I may even personify it. I live out here in the middle of the serious desert, Cody, but I spend most of my time inside. I spend most of my time on computers. I spend most of my time with radio. So I am exactly one of those people. Bear that in mind. Even though I've got lots of I've got 20-year food supply. I've got 20-year batteries, and I've got solar panels and wind machines and all kinds of things, battery backup when power fails here. I don't even know it in my house. It just might blink. That'd be about it. And all the rest of the neighbors are coming out going, hey, how come he's got power? So I've done a lot, but not because I'm an outdoor person or I necessarily anticipate a zombie apocalypse.
What do you see when you look out your windows of your house?
Well, it depends which window, but I see desert. I see lots of birds, lots of animals. The desert is populated a lot more than people think with life. It's kind of a strange life. We've got these giant black birds out here that look like they belong in a horror movie. What do you mean by what do I see?
Well, that's my point. Is you are, they're ravens, by the way.
Yes.
Blackbirds that you see, and you are out there. Your job is on radio, and thank God it is, because you've been doing it for decades. And I'm super excited to talk to you tonight, because you're like a rock star.
Very kind of you.
It's true. It's true. So what I'm getting at is when Art Bell looks out most at his windows, he sees nature. So I'm not saying you have to be out in it per se, but you are in it. At least the box you live in. Everyone lives in a box, so to speak.
That's right.
It's out in the bush.
Oh, yes.
Because you're talking to another desert in Arizona. So it's midnight in the desert for both of us.
All right.
So I get that. But my point is that a lot of people are urban-based, and that's fine. But you're not. Because you're up in Nevada, and I've been in Nevada several times, and you have just as remote country as we have in Arizona. And for those that aren't in this belt, in the Southwest, that's news, right? If you go to Connecticut or New Hampshire and whatever, it's not like it is in the Southwest. There's not that much wide open space, and it's different.
No, it's so different, Cody, that I've had people come here from New York, and they are extremely uneasy. I mean, you can stand outside where I live on a clear day, and you can see 40, 60 miles. You can just see the mountains way, way far away. The view, and it is so unobstructed that it actually freaks people from the east out.
I understand. My clients are the same way. What also freaks people out is the isolation. Because when you're in bush, when you're in deep wilderness, or when you're living at a remote location, which I do all three of those, it forces you to pay attention to yourself. There's no distractions. And that's scary for a lot of people. So if you talked about a Ted Koppel grid meltdown, the biggest enemies that we face really are between our own ears.
Well, let me ask you.
Imagine.
Yes, do you go along with that? In other words, Koppel said, Studies have shown that after a year, only 1 out of 10 would be left alive.
Well, I think common sense has shown that we don't know what in the hell we're doing anymore on this planet. I see that all the time in my courses. So what I mean by that is we become disassociated with what it takes to live. We're an advanced, quote-unquote, civilization that doesn't know where to put the poop if the toilet doesn't work, that doesn't know how to feed ourselves, and that doesn't, know where the water's coming short of out of the faucet in the wall. So if you took a whole civilization and realized that most of these people in the civilization don't know how to get basic human needs met, would you call that an advanced society or not?
No, not in the sense that you mean it, of course.
We're talking survival. We're talking non-optional. We're talking, food, water, thermoregulation stuff we'll talk about, throughout the night.
Right.
I'm not talking about accessory stuff. And what I'm saying is that most of civilization, especially in the U.S., doesn't know how to do those things. So we don't know how to take care of our basic needs.
I know what I've seen on the survival shows.
Uh-oh, here we go.
Yeah, that's all there is. I'm trying to be honest with you here. I'm not an expert in any one of these areas except, watching. And it's fascinating. I must say it is fascinating. Talk to me a little bit about, before you were on dual survival, you obviously grew up in a lifestyle that, I don't know, taught you survival, taught you how to do what you do. How did that come to be?
I don't have a real sexy story. Like, I wish I was raised by wolves, or something, but it didn't turn out that way. I'm an only kid, and my dad was military, so we moved around a lot. And the only common thing that I had growing up was going outdoors, was being outside. And so I was outside quite a bit. And fast forward through a lot of hellish stuff I put myself through as a youth in basic survival training, except not the type you'd wish on your kids. I pitched doing what I do to a bunch of summer camps here in Prescott, Arizona, and not one of them wrote me back. No one gave a damn, about survival training or primitive skills or whatever. Keep in mind, this will be my 26th year in business this coming year. So this was back in a time when no one really cared about this sort of stuff. And that led to very, very slowly clawing my way to courses that people would enroll in, etc., through something called a flyer. Mm-hmm. It was on a piece of paper, and you could get pretty colors at the copy store.
Yes.
And I would put them on something called a phone booth. You probably remember those, right?
I remember them, yes.
Yeah. And on stores and windows and wherever I could put this colored piece of paper saying, hey, this is my Aboriginal Living Skills School and I'm teaching skills. And that's literally how it started out, Art, because there was no Facebook, there was no cell phones, there was no YouTube, there was no way to project yourself as something you're not, to be picked up by the next network as the flavor of the month survival show on TV. You had to work for your clients.
So there really was a time like that, huh?
There was, yeah.
Yeah.
And it was a much more starkly honest time.
It was. It was. I'm sort of convinced, Cody, this is one of my personal things, that we get slowly, as we get older, we get slowly more and more and more disgusted with everything that's going on, the music, the young people, everything that's going on, so that by the time we're finally ready to pass on, it's like, all right, get me out of here. I'm done.
Well, we hope you have many more decades here doing your show.
Kind of you. But I really mean that. It just seems like a natural thing. The older people get a little bit grumpy. I know I can be a little grumpy. People write to me all the time and say, boy, you were sure grumpy last night. I didn't think so necessarily, but they thought it. So I guess I can be. And I know you can be. So as we get older, that happens. And what's going on around us seems kind of crazy, huh?
It can be. I know you're passionate about radio.
Oh, yes.
You have to be, right? And I have the same passion for my profession. And along with that passion comes a very limited tolerance for BS, which I'm assuming you have as well.
That's right. And I put up with a lot of it.
I'm sure.
Yeah. Sometimes on this program, Cody, I know that I'm getting BS, and I just let it go because it's very entertaining. Sometimes I can't stand it anymore, and I say to the guest, "Oh, come on, I've had it. This is complete BS." Anyway, yeah, it's happened. It's happened. So, can we talk a little bit about? You know what? Even before we get into the TV shows, I want to say something. The sickest that I've ever been in my life, Cody, and I mean the sickest I've been in my life, there's just no relief from it, is seasickness. I got my dad had a big, frankly, yacht, big boat, sailboat, and he took me out, and I started to get sick, and there was no relief. I mean, no relief. You toss up all you have, and then you continue to want to toss up what's no longer even there. It's that bad. And I saw you get seasick. Not that badly, but I saw you on a raft in the middle of the Pacific, and you were looking pretty green.
Yeah. Yeah, that doesn't really work for me. Yeah, I can get seasick pretty easy. So that's the only reason I wasn't a Navy SEAL.
That's a good reason not to be a SEAL.
Is your BS meter going off now?
Not at all. Oh, no.
Okay.
Not at all. You were in the military or no?
Oh, God, no.
No.
Kidding? No. Dad was.
I see. Yeah, my dad was too. All right. Hold it right there. We'll be right back. This is that longer break I told you about. I'm Art Bell. This is Midnight in the Desert.
And of course, we'll be back in just a second as soon as the audio completes. Remember, tomorrow will be the last day of the week for the Tournament of the Elementals. Oh, shoot. I didn't do what I was actually up there for. I wanted to go over here to the artifacts.
Calls. We trust you, but remember, the NSA, well, you know. To call the show, please dial 1-952-225-5278. That's 1-952-CALL. Art.
My guest is Cody Lundin, and he's a very cool dude. And again, I'm going to go back for a second to what Ted Koppel said, and it was that if somebody brings down our grid, it'd be down for 2 years. And he said 1 out of 10 people would be left alive in the United States. And we talked about it, but I'm not sure I got an exact answer. Do you think that would be accurate, Cody?
What do we have? I think we have like 386 million people in the U.S. Isn't that about right?
Yes,
Somewhere
about right, yeah.
So my math sucks. So what is that? If Ted Koppel's right, how many people is that?
We don't have to do the math. I mean, it's just...
God.
There's not many people. 1 in 10 left alive.
1 in 10. I think that's, well, it depends. Okay, because I'm used to these, hey, Cody, and they want this pat answer, and as if I'm McDonald's or something. So.
All right, well, then, just take it this way. Would the majority of the Americans be dead before a year went by without power?
Probably, because of the way things are now. If you'd asked this question like 50 years ago, it would have been a different answer.
Very different,
different answer.
You're right about that.
So, and that's kind of what I'm getting at with, the lack of nature, etc. And there's a lot of people coming back to simplicity. You can imagine the kind of emails. I can imagine some of the emails you get. You can imagine some of the emails I get. And there's a lot of good things going on, and a lot of terrifying things, of course. But with people starting to do more with less, the gardening is huge. Non-hybrid seeds is going to the roof. There's a lot of good things regarding self-reliance, and people are being inspired to do more with less. And I'm hoping that's more of a I want to do this rather than we're scared of zombies do this. Because when people do self-reliance and preparedness based on fear, that's a temporary solution, and that never lasts. When they do it because they want simplicity and freedom in their life, then that's a lasting process that I can support.
I start to have organ failure when my internet's down.
We need to work on you, Art. You need to come on a course.
Yeah. The course would be survival for me, Cody. You should do a show on that. So, anyway, you don't much like the term untold survivalist. How come?
The term survivalist has a negative connotation.
Why?
And why?
Yeah.
Eric Fryn, the cop killer, is a survivalist. We have people blowing up federal buildings. They're survivalists. So you tell me, Art, how can a word describe someone who blows up a federal building and someone who teaches people how to survive an outdoor survival experience gone bad?
I think you need to rethink it. Now, you need to rethink it. Survivalist is not a bad word. As you portrayed it, you're talking about criminals.
I'm talking about the word survivalist. That's what we're talking about.
Well, look, even if they were, yeah, but they didn't ruin the term survivalist. It's still a fascinating thing to be and to be able to do. I don't feel like they ruined it. A lot of them.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah, go ahead.
If you're a survivalist,
yeah.
Okay, tell me what you do. What do you do? Or you're a survivalist. What does that mean?
Well, in your case, it means you have a profession on TV if you want it, or you write books, or you teach classes.
On what, though? On what?
Survival.
What does that mean? Survival.
It means how you get your internet back up.
You got me there. Okay, so here's my next point, because eventually we're going to talk a dirty word, and I know it'll seem like profanity to a lot of people, but it's not. It's called credibility and integrity, and those things have gone by the wayside. So if someone's a survivalist, quote unquote, just let me finish. If someone's a survivalist, then I would ask them, oh really? What do you teach? Because saying survivalist is kind of like saying tree in the forest. Well, is it a softwood? Is it a hardwood? Is it spring, summer, autumn? Is it a good bowwood? Can you make fire with it? It doesn't mean anything. And that's my point, is the word survivalist is used by networks because you don't have to vet it. Because it doesn't really have a meaning. It's unvettable, which makes it nice when you hire phony people on TV to portray a survival expert, so to speak, according to them. So if someone asks me, one, I don't like the term, and I'm telling you why I don't like the term, but they'll ask me, what do you do? I'll say, what do you want? Do you want urban preparedness? Do you want modern outdoor survival skills?
Right.
Do you want primitive living skills? Do you want homesteading? We're not all on the same bandwidth. There's different stations on the radio. It's all the radio, but, we could be listening to heavy metal or Art Bell, and I want Art Bell tonight. It's all the same radio, but they're different stations on the radio, and you'll get a very different experience listening to heavy metal than Art Bell.
Yeah, you're really going to hate my bumper music.
I liked your music, and I dig that guy with the deep voice. Is that you, or is that
No. I have a fairly deep voice, but he puts me to shame. That's Ross Mitchell up in Reno, very good friend of mine.
Wow, he's great.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely great. So, I don't know. I exactly was not, or I guess I was a little unhappy with your being not unhappy with the word survivalist, because, some of the guys who did bad stuff called themselves survivalists, but that truly doesn't ruin the word. I mean,
the media called them survivalists, and that's my point again. We're dealing with people's lives, Art. I take that seriously. Survival instruction deals with whether people live or die based on the advice given. There's a time for accuracy, and this profession is it. And when you have a term that not only deals with acts of domestic terrorism, they can also supposedly define a community college instructor who teaches outdoor survival skills. That's not accurate. And it further muddies the water, like a lot of survival shows out there, which ends up killing people. And we'll talk about your fascination with survival TV. And, you thought I was probably your buddy, but I'm going to be breaking your heart.
Well, it's okay. No, it's all right. My heart can't stand to be broken about this. Look, originally I thought survival meant, like Survivor on TV and who gets voted off next. I mean, that was it for me until I ran into Naked and Afraid. And, oh, by the way, somebody asked on the computer, are you wearing shoes now?
Of course not.
Yeah, you never do, right? You actually didn't have to do this on the show, but you choose in life, not just on the show, but in life, not to wear shoes. Why?
Well, that's a multi-pronged answer.
Right.
One, I don't like being anyone's you-know-what. And you can take a very highly trained special forces operator and take off their boots and they're worthless. So if I can take $100 piece of gear and rip through $1 million worth of training from the U.S. government, there's something wrong.
All right, can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
You had a partner who was like a special forces special guy or something, and he one time did take off his shoes. And was he next to worthless?
Yeah, of course.
Sorry, I had to ask.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of Native people, if you travel all over the world, like I have, and you go to some more remote locations, you'll see that going barefoot is kind of normal. It's only interesting and weird in our culture, and in most modern cultures. But if you get off the beaten trail, a lot of people are going barefoot. I also am fascinated with, of course, doing more with less. That's my passion. And if I don't need to wear shoes, why would I? I do have sandals that I wear, and I have flip-flops in my Jeep because it's not worth being celibate. I want to be able to take my sweetheart out to dinner at a restaurant.
Oh, that's right.
And so they can frown on that unless I know the owner, and sometimes I do. I like tough feet because it's a huge survival asset.
All right, well, let me stop you right there and say, for the average tenderfoot person like myself, if I decided I wanted to toughen up, make my feet tough, and at my age I don't, but if I did, I could go tromping around the desert, and we have lots of stuff out here that will turn your feet into shredded stumps of what they were. How long would it take to get tough?
Well, to get tough. No, I'm like your trainer. I'm Art Bell's trainer. Well, you hit the nail on the head. Hanging out in Nevada in the desert is different than walking in the lawn in Connecticut. So you don't go to get the PhD until you've gone to grade school.
Right.
So I'm not advocating people go barefoot. I could care less whether people wear shoes or not. I don't care. This is just what I do. And I don't even think about it anymore, just like you don't think about wearing pants. I'm assuming you're wearing pants now.
I am.
Right. But if
Very
someone
personal
asks
question,
you,
but,
are you wearing, why do you wear pants, Art? Well, so that's how I feel about the shoe thing. But if you wanted to train, you'd do it easy. You'd start on, your kitchen floor or whatever, and then go out into a lawn. The beauty about Arizona and Nevada, is it's hardcore. I mean, if you can go barefoot in Arizona, I've walked over some nasty stuff. And what fascinates me, even to this day, is I've gone barefoot all over the world, quite literally, and it's doable, because people
obviously you did it. But again, my question is, for me, if I started out and I wanted to get to the point from where I am now, which is 0, to tough feet, we'll call it 10, how long out there walking in the desert?
Well, again, we're starting slow. I mean, callus tissue, I don't have I don't know how quick calluses grow. Let's say that you could feel definite results within just a few weeks.
And the amount of pain involved in those definite results would be on a scale of 1 to 10.
The pain never ends. When you go barefoot in Arizona, you deal with pain.
Yes. Okay. Well, I think probably anywhere. I mean, you go into the jungles and you're barefoot, there are other dangers.
There are, and there are dangers, and I don't walk like other people walk. When you walk barefoot for as many years as I have, you literally walk different. You drop down with the ball of the foot. You don't. Most people strike with the heel, and there's a book called Born to Run out there, which has started this barefoot running craze, with the Tarahumara Indians in northern Mexico. And a lot of people strike with the heel first and then with the ball of the foot. And that's very jarring, to the human physiology. It's jarring to the skeleton. I don't walk that way. So I've literally, walking barefoot has changed the way I walk biomechanically. And also it's changed my awareness level. I look where I step because I am barefoot, and so I pay attention to where I'm walking. And my fascination also is I love to read survival stories. And there's a lot of POW stories out there, as you can imagine. And one of the first things they did is they took their boots because they knew they couldn't run. And I was like, I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be dependent on that small piece of gear, as valuable as it is. And I love footwear. It definitely has a place. I'm not anti-shoe. I'm not anti-boot. I'm not like waving a flag, everyone go barefoot and hug a tree. I'm not. I just like to do more with less, and I'm fascinated about what I can get away with on this planet without being a slave.
Okay, how much of an issue was that in the show itself? In other words, you had partners who did use footwear, and they sort of accused you of being too slow. Well, of course, when you have bare feet, you pay attention to where you're putting that bare foot, so you move a little slower, I take it, right?
Well, what's the rush? You know, I mean, unless you're running from something, which we're not.
Oh, come on, it's
So
TV. It's TV. I've done TV,
Exactly.
and it's nothing but a rush. That's all they do in TV and movies is rush.
You are right. And most TV, all TV is produced, and we can talk about that later. So as far as me not getting somewhere fast enough, you know, where we were going, you know, what was the rush to do that?
Well, I think their only complaint was it was TV, you know. And so, on the other hand, I have so much respect for you that you did that you went barefoot. And so let's jump ahead just a little bit because I can't stand not talking about it. I do watch Naked and Afraid, and it does seem to me, Cody, that, my God, being dumped off in a jungle or in Africa or Nicaragua or whatever the destination is, absolutely naked, particularly in the jungle, my God, is really, really terrifying. And even if you don't consider all the possible dangers and things that can happen to your skin, which are many, the bugs generally eat you to death.
Yeah.
So how much of a test is it to be completely naked, not just bare feet, bare everything?
Well, it's a produced show.
Oh, yeah.
Granted, that there's people naked out there,
Oh, yeah.
and we can go in as far down this rabbit hole as you want. But really, when all good ideas have left and there's nothing more constructive to bring to the table, have them take their clothes off.
Yeah.
And that's essentially what's happened. I have an idea for a new survival show that I'll share with you. You know, it's just you and me, right? You know,
if you're really serious, I wouldn't do it on the air. Someone absolutely is going to steal it.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna just play with that thought. This is for discovering all the networks out there. You take a man, take a woman, you take their clothes off, you put them in the wilderness, and you film them doing you know what.
Oh, I see. Doing it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a unique idea, pretty original, and it's a hell of a lot better than just watching them try to make fire with sticks.
All right, but look, I will say this in their defense. The nakedness seems to be an issue for maybe the first day. And then when they figure out they don't have water, they don't have food, and they don't have shelter, somehow it slips to second and third and fourth and then forgotten finally when they're starving.
Right. Let's talk about Naked and Afraid Butte, Montana in January. They're dead.
Well, they're dead, yeah.
Right. So those shows and the show Survivor, there's a reason they're always filmed in temperate regions. Because the biggest causes of death are lack of thermoregulation, either hypothermia, the body core temperature drops below 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit, 37 degrees Celsius, or hyperthermia when it climbs up. So when you take away the two biggest causes of death in outdoor survival, you can just have all the time you want sitting under the coconut tree arguing and bickering and trying to catch the rat with your hair or whatever. Do you see what I'm getting at?
I do, but I mean, it's still tough. I mean, they are starving. A lot of them never do catch anything worth any protein at all in 21 days. And, 35 pounds gone. Boom.
What are we learning by this? Because any one of us could take a bunch of people with no experience and throw them out in the woods and film it. They used to do that in ancient Rome. It was called the gladiator days. Just let's throw a bunch of tigers and throw a dude out there and see what happens. What are we learning from that, Art?
Well, now wait a minute. On Naked and Afraid, they do go in with some, sorry for the word, survival training of some sort.
Really?
He was in the military, one guy in the military, special forces. And
sure. We can talk about that later, too, about being in the military.
And usually the girl was in at least the Girl Scouts,
Mm-hmm. So, most of the people on TV on these shows have no experience in survival skills.
Okay.
And I've dealt with several of them in more ways than one. including those on Naked and Afraid. Okay.
Really?
So I had a woman call me from Atlanta, Georgia, and she had a very thick accent because she was from Atlanta, Georgia, and she was going to be on Naked and Afraid and wanted to do that. And this producer told her that she might want to brush up on her survival skills.
Brush up.
And I enjoyed this conversation so much. Usually I have an employee that takes my calls because I can get some weird calls, but I took this one myself, and I asked this woman, okay, so what is your experience, ma'am? Because she was coming to me, she wanted some training, okay, to do this TV show called Naked and Afraid.
Sure.
And I asked her 3 times, what is your outdoor survival skills experience, ma'am? And she finally said, well, I do nature hikes. In other words, none.
Yeah.
So the producer's word, the key word here is brush up. Brush up means go learn it from scratch because you don't know anything about outdoor survival. So when you take someone and strip their clothes off, which helps with thermoregulation, it's key to survival, and you put them in a wilderness environment and expect them to live off the land with minimal gear, you're going to the epic PhD of survival training. I don't even know if I'm there yet. And when you take novices and put them out there and you have them sign a legal waiver that says they can't sue Discovery Channel if something inept goes on, and you deal with the production company that has no survival skills experience, and a network that has no survival skills experience, then there's going to be some issues.
Gee, in the network. Okay, well, a lot to talk about there. Oof. Wonder how she made out. Wonder which episode that was. Well, all right, we're going to take a break here. Cody Lundin is my guest. He was on Dual Survival on the Discovery Channel. I'm sure many of you have seen it. I know you have, because obviously many fans are listening. From the high desert, the great American Southwest, midnight in the desert, raging in the night.
Of course, we'll be back after that audio bumper finishes. Interesting, though, to see that Art Bell used what now goes for Dave Ramsey's starting of the show bumper. Let's head to Asgard real quick before the end of the day. Got about 24 minutes before the new day in Dominion pops.
To cast your ray of light into the darkness, please call 1-952-CALL ART. That's 1-952-225-5278.
Actually, that represents our beginnings. It is somewhat radio now, and proudly so. Hello there, KABC in Los Angeles, and so many more. So, Cody Lundin is here tonight, and he's obviously a really very cool guy to interview. And we were talking for a minute anyway about this series, Naked and Afraid, not his series. Both are very controversial in a lot of ways, actually, Naked and Afraid and Dual Survival, which was his, and we'll get to all that. But with respect to Naked and Afraid, I can't help but ask, and everybody wants me to ask, what do you think is fake and what do you think is real? I'll give you an example, and you can knock it down. They've been starving for 20 days, I believe, and tomorrow is Extraction Day. But they're sitting there starved half to death on the ground, and suddenly a deadfall goes off, and they get lucky, and a rabbit just made it, or a bird or whatever, just made it in and tripped the deadfall. And they get the protein they need on day 20 to make it out alive. Now, they wouldn't go that far, would they, as to put a bird in a trap?
Of course they would. All TV is produced. That's why you have television producers, right?
Yes.
So if you could film something verbatim and actually film something completely accurate in the field or the city or wherever, and then you'd still have this thing called an edit bay with an editor that's going to go take that footage and tweak it to whatever the network wants. The network has something called a big fat wallet that pays everyone, and they're dictating what goes on. behind the scenes. They're the ultimate authority or no one gets paid.
Wow.
Right? I don't care what survival show you watch, all television shows are produced. And some things are done for real and some things are not. I mean, on Dual Survival, when it rained, we didn't predict that. You know, it's not like we caused it to rain or caused some certain things to happen. But I have real low tolerance. I don't watch TV. I've never even seen my show.
Really?
You know, why would I watch someone else's show?
Yeah, I don't listen to my own shows either.
Really?
No, I don't.
Huh.
I don't.
So, you know, I've worked in TV a long time. You know, since the mid-'90s. I had one of the first survival shows on Discovery in 2003, pre-Les Stroud, pre-Edward, you know, etc. So I've been behind the camera, in front of the camera. I've produced, I've written, I've directed. You know, so I know all sides of this lens. And one of the reasons I chose to do Dual Survival was, one, it seemed less BS. And keep in mind, I got the job in 2009, and we started filming in January of 2010. A lot has changed since then. And I assumed Discovery had credibility. At one point they did. Now they're claimed to fame as having some idiot in black spandex try to shove his face down a snake's mouth. So they've degenerated into that. But Dual Survival at the time was kind of one of the earlier survival shows. I took the show because I was getting paid, because I'm a professional. I get paid for my work.
Sure.
I took the show because I could travel the world and I could learn and teach survival skills. It was an awesome opportunity to do that. I took the show to directly counter some of the nonsense that was out there on other survival shows, because I was tired of having my students come to my courses and ask me, well, can't you drink your pee? Or whatever it is. And there's a lot of survival shows. Here's what you need to remember, Art, about this. When you watch television, you're into low alpha waves. Okay?
Right.
That's what TV induces, low alpha. And that means a relaxed state and suggestibility.
Sure.
So that's why commercials soften people up, right? That's why you buy the Clorox or whatever. So TV is all about images. The reason I put the crazy cartoons I have in both of my books is because I know when people are really scared, when that sympathetic nervous system kicks in and the epinephrine dumps in the body and all complex and fine motor skills go to hell, that they're not going to remember what I have written. They're going to remember my illustrations in my books. So when you watch television shows, when you watch survival TV shows by a network with no survival experience, by a production company with no survival experience, by most hosts with no survival experience, and you're in that alpha state and you're susceptible to the training, to the imagery, you're being fed BS. And the problem with that is when people are in crisis situations, if they're ever in a real survival situation, what comes to the forefront of their memories are those images they've seen in that suggestible state on TV. What I'm getting at is death. Okay? It's not a joke. My profession deals with keeping people alive.
Yes.
And I take it very, very seriously. And when I see networks making a mockery out of my profession, like if you can imagine if they did that with radio, you'd be pissed off. I'm pissed off about it because once I have to pick up the pieces with my clients, and two, some of the survival programming has killed real people that have thought what they were watching on television was real.
Have people died on reality TV survival shows?
They had that helicopter that went down. Well, 3 people died on a Discovery Channel show with my ex-co-host. You know,
Wow.
3 people were killed in L.A. And then I think 9 people were killed. I think it was in France on a TV survival show they had there. And just wait, there's more coming. That's why Discovery has in their contract you can't see them if something goes wrong.
Well, if I were Discovery, I'd have that in the contract too.
I understand that, but you know, we're dealing with risk here. We're dealing with gross negligence is what we're dealing with.
All right, well, let's come back to that. I want to close the chapter on a lady who came to you that we were talking about. What did you do with her? Did you teach her, help her at all to prepare for Naked and Afraid?
I said, you know, call me back. She said she was going to talk to the producer, and of course I never heard from her again, which is typical.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
And why would that be? I mean, you would think that the show would want her to develop some skills.
You'd think that, wouldn't you, Art?
You would, yes.
And that's what I told her.
So you think she talked to the producer, and the producer said, you don't want to do that, or what?
I have no idea. I told her that she should know the bioregion she's going to, because jungle survival is different from desert survival, which is different from cold weather survival, etc.
Yes.
And she said, oh, yeah, that makes sense, Cody. And hell yes, it makes sense. But that's not what they're after about making sense. Why have competent people when you can get incompetent people that cause more drama? Because that's good for ratings. This isn't about education. This is about exploitation.
Mm-hmm.
And I got a problem with that because it deals with people's lives. Imagine if we had a bunch of shows about doctors, and that was the big craze, shows about doctors, except they weren't really doctors on the TV show, and they were teaching your family how to do surgery. You walk in the garage and see your son cutting open your daughter or whatever. Do you think the AMA would have a problem with that? Probably.
God. Listen, you mentioned exploitation, right? To be fair, it is exploitation on both sides. In other words, maybe you've got some lady who wants her face on TV. Maybe you've got some lady who just wants to do it for the adventure. Plus, she's probably getting paid pretty decently. I have no idea how well they're paid, but probably money could be an issue. So, for you, for example, I mean, Cody, when you were on the TV show, even though I understand the ethical bar was higher, you were exploiting them for travel, for some whatever fun you had, and certainly for money. So it was a joint exploitation in a way, right?
No, I don't agree with that at all. I was an employee. I was doing my job that I was hired to do. Are you exploiting your producer because she produces for you?
In the strictest sense, I guess. I mean, we pay her well. But so it's life is a sort of an exploit of sorts of people, and you can still be ethical and still realize and call it exploitation. It is a little bit. I mean, would you have done it for no money?
No. I make my living teaching survival skills. Right. I expect to be paid for my work, like most professionals do.
There you go. All right. Well, depends, I guess, on your definition of exploitation. You're talking about much more serious stuff in the way they produce.
I'm talking about your life, Art. I'm talking about my profession deals with whether people live or die.
Right.
So it's pretty serious. So when you take a profession like the medical profession and you exploit it with phony drama and out of context phony reality television that causes people to die who believe that, that's wrong.
Well, where would you put what you did on TV, on Dual Survival? Would you put it in that realm, or is it bars and bars above that?
I am a professional survival instructor, and so I went on an outdoor survival skills show as an instructor to teach people, and I did the best of that to my ability, and I tried to keep it as clean as possible, even though there was a daily battle.
I know you
with
did.
Producers that wanted to do other stuff, right?
Drama.
They
want drama.
Right. And I understand that. It's not like I just fell off the cabbage truck. And I understand that television's television, but there's a line in the sand, and I have a very, very strong line in the sand. My first allegiance is to your listeners. My first allegiance is to my students. And if you have a survival instructor who's lying, who's fraudulent, who is causing unnecessary risk, there's a problem there. Because a real survival instructor deals with mitigating risk, not creating risk.
Right.
And so even though I was pushed into certain things on dual survival, that it's like, how are we going to do this if I don't with the storyline? I really, really tried. They didn't like me very much because what they want is a person they can tell what to do and they'll do it. Because people had a hard time with me on the show because of I would not budge with integrity and I would not budge with safety. And I always will be a pain in the butt about those two things.
I hear you. Well, I certainly have ethical standards, too, for what I do here on the air. Okay, so when they did this, what you call defamation, episode, and I saw it, by the way. And they depicted you, your partner at that time was trying to trap a snake's head with a forked stick, and you really got a kick out of it. I mean, you were laughing. You probably laughed until your ribs hurt. I've done that a few times. It's really cool. I don't know. It's just something that gets you. What happened?
It was absurd, is what happened. I mean, you're a Nevada guy.
Yes.
I'm an Arizona guy. So we have 13 different species of rattlesnakes in Arizona.
Oh, yes.
We have the most species of rattlesnakes of any place in North America. We have the Massasauga, we have the Mojave rattlesnake, we have the prairie rattlesnake, we have the sidebiter rattlesnake, we have the speckled rattlesnake, we have the twin-spotted rattlesnake, we have the tiger rattlesnake, we have the ring-nosed rattlesnake, we have the western diamondback rattlesnake, we have the black-tailed rattlesnake, we have the Arizona black rattlesnake, the western rattlesnake, and the rock rattlesnake. So when I see someone who's incredibly adept at handling a snake, I thought it was funny.
Really funny.
Really funny.
Yeah. It went on for a while. So we're sort of jumping ahead. This is the episode, folks, where Cody was going off the program, and that's a story in itself, and they made a program that kind of made him look bad, and he calls it the defamation episode. You're going to get, Cody's then going to probably go on to another series somewhere, or not, and then somebody else is going to come along and replace him, and so you have to make the outgoing look bad and the incoming look good, right?
Yeah, and the reason, it was literally defamation, and I've never seen the episode, of course, but I've had people explain it to me, and we can talk about the context if you want to. But I had an attorney send Discovery a cease and desist for defamation. I knew what they were going to do. They knew what they were going to do. They ignored my cease and desist, and so as far as I'm concerned, that was all done with malice, because they knew exactly what they were doing.
Well, you said it yourself. You can go into an edit room, and you can make anybody look
Correct.
However you want them to look.
Right, and that's the real danger, and that was dangerous. Even when I did everything that I knew I should do on that show as a professional in my field, God help me when the editors in New York City got done with it, right?
Oh, yeah.
None of these people had any outdoor survival skills experience. But the reason that episode came about is Discovery asked me 3 times to lie to my fan base. When they fired me, and I was fired, I did not quit. I was fired. That's a whole story in itself. They finally realized, I think a few weeks later, and called my entertainment attorney and said, they finally realized, well, how in the hell are we going to explain that Cody's gone? This just dawned on them a few weeks later. And they asked my entertainment attorney, would Cody like to do another episode? And he can say that he quit so he could put his Aboriginal Living Skills School. And my first answer was something I can't say on the air because of your number 1 rule.
Thank you.
And then they called again, and they asked again, is Cody sure he doesn't want to essentially lie to his fan base?
Did that thing what you said end in you?
Pardon me?
Did that thing you say end in you?
No, yourself.
Okay.
The middle word rhymes with
I've got it.
hockey puck.
I've got it, yeah.
And then they called a 3rd time and asked me to lie to millions of people to cover their you-know-what.
Sure.
And, of course, they were going to pay me thousands of dollars to do it. And so you have a network that has zero thoughts about having me lie to my fan base. And I want nothing of that. And so that's how that episode came about, because they had to explain how Cody went away. I wasn't willing to lie for them. And that's how I got treated. It's really sad.
Yeah, it is. It is. I've been through some episodic things with networks myself, so.
You've never been screwed by a big corporation, have you, Art?
Oh, Cody, you didn't do any research on me at all, did you? Listen.
Premier Radio Network. Oh.
Get a kick out of it, like the snake. So, let's return to this. What would you consider to be the most challenging location to go into with minimal anything? In other words, the most challenging, I guess you've been to them all, been all over the world. What was the hardest?
the hardest situation to go to, the hardest environment to go to is the one that lacks the most resources. And you and I both know which area that is. And I understand about the ravens and the Gambel's quail and all the stuff you have crawling around Nevada.
Oh, yeah.
But water's life. Agua es la vida. So when you take away water from the equation, you take away the flora and you take away the fauna. And people survive on something called resources. So any place on the planet that lacks resources is ultimately the hardest place to survive in for the gringo like me or for native peoples. So usually that points to deserts.
No problem here. We have a Walmart.
Exactly. You're good to go.
So you think the desert?
Absolutely. Well, then there's the ocean too. Just because we don't, breathe water, the ocean is totally rich in resources. But it's the problem of we're not water-based people. We live on land. So deserts is number one. It's a resource game. It's resources. So if again, it depends on where you are on the planet and what season it is. If there's a seasonality whatsoever,
right?
The acorns are on or they're not. And there's no free lunch, pardon the pun. And it's very, very, the more I know about survival skills, primitive skills, to define this, so we're not calling, a tree, the more I realize I don't feel like I know what in the hell I'm doing. There's so much to know and learn. I'm just amazed at all of our ancestors and how, it's amazing we're here. When you go over to Africa and you're out in the bush and you think just a couple hundred years ago there's people walking around with sharp sticks, it's like, how in the hell did anyone survive out there? Everything wants to eat you. There's danger at every turn, and a lot of it was the same here in North America, with the grizzly bear and whatever. I have a profound respect for native peoples. They're my heroes.
Africa is scary. Africa's scary. I was in Africa, and I remember getting in between a mama and her baby elephant. And, oh, man, let me tell you how fast elephants can move when they want to. It was scary. Our instructor or guide just told everybody run in different directions. Everybody is on their own. Good luck. Get behind a tree. That was it. And we all ran.
It was a mama and a baby?
Yeah, she charged.
Yeah.
God, it was scary.
Have you ever been around a horny elephant, one in must?
No.
Yeah.
No.
Don't.
No. That was enough for me, trust me. I ran. I got behind a tree. I got lucky. None of us got killed. So anyway, there's some rough spots on Earth, but you would say deserts as a rule, or the ocean. And in both cases, Cody, the one first thing you gotta have is water, right?
Yeah, well, the one first thing we gotta have is oxygen. Well, that's why I put the ocean up there, right? Because drowning sucks.
Right.
But then, it depends on the situation, Art. And here's where I'm really excited to be on your show because one of my great desert survival instructors, is a guy named Dave Gansey. And Dave Gansey was over with the first Bush War and was actually, Richard Marcinko from Red Cell, SEAL Team 6, took his desert survival course. Dave Gansey's a real gentleman. He's in his mid-70s now. He's like my dad, my desert dad. And he's an amazing guy. And when I used to ask him questions, I went to the library, saw him in the paper. This was like in the early 90s. And I latched onto him at the public library. He thought I was some homeless guy. Mm-hmm. And I was like, you got to teach me what you know in the desert. And he did. And he had this term variables. He would always use this word variables. And it used to drive me crazy. I was like, Dave, just give me the damn answer. I don't want to hear your variables. And now I understand what he means. So when you ask me a question, what is the most important thing, right, Cody? Well, Art, it depends on the context of the situation.
No, I didn't say most important. I said first.
First, okay. You're out with a T-shirt and shorts. They're wet, and it's snowing, and you're up in the mountains in Nevada. Is water a priority?
Okay. All right, the variables. You're going to get me with the variables. Yeah, you're right, of course.
I am, and that's what's important about my profession, and that's what's so lacking on television. They don't give a damn about the variables, and they don't understand the variables, and it's hurting people. It's a disservice to people, and I'm hoping to clear some of that up on your show.
Okay.
So you have to be very deliberate. Is it an FM or AM? Is it a rock station or easy listening? Is it talk news? Is it Fox News? Is it CNN? What is it? We know it's radio, but what in the hell is the intention of the station? That's important.
Sure. It is, although I'm perfectly happy to be played on a music station. So you sound really bitter about your reality TV experience and about reality TV in general, beyond even where I thought you might be. You're very bitter. And I've experienced that as well, Cody, with another corporation, and I'm going to that. But I get it. But you're really still in a pretty bitter stage, huh?
I'm in a passionate stage. I can't say that I've moved on completely, because when you're defamed internationally,
right,
when they keep running the same episode and it never ends,
right,
yeah, that sucks,
yeah,
right?
Yep.
But what I'm trying to do, anyone who's been my student knows how I teach, and I'm very passionate about how I teach, and I don't mince words, because I'm dealing with people's safety.
Oh, I can hear that.
Yeah. So, I'm on your show, and you're asking me questions, and I'm answering them with passion. And, I'm pissed off at that network that purposely defame me when that network has hired so many people who are phony instructors. When they get a real one, they treated them real bad. And I don't have a lot of tolerance for that. I think that's unprofessional and tacky.
Mm-hmm. So you must have, for the most part, considering what they need, for a TV production, and what you're trying to give the people and do on the show, you must have found a way to sort of live with that divide in thinking.
Yeah, the season 1 was awesome, and then season 2 I found out about Dave Canterbury's fraud to be on the show, and it really went downhill from there. That was the start of the troubles.
Okay, to explain, Dave, wasn't it something about was it his military record or something?
Yeah, it was his military record, and it was his survival skills experience record, or lack thereof.
Oh. Okay. Well, you would have been the one to experience the second category, to be sure. His lack of experience in survival. And was that really apparent to you? Did you have to cover up? Did you have to cover up?
The dual survival is flawed in the get-go, because being in the military doesn't make you an outdoor survival expert. Being in the military means you're in the military. So being a plumber doesn't make you a good electrician. They're two separate professions. So the context, which I think is important, you have the intention, you have the context of something which defines the content of something.
Right.
And this is what I go through with every custom course. So I have a client that says, I want to learn survival skills. Well, that's like saying tree to me. So what do you mean? We go down the rabbit hole. So the show is flawed from the get-go, because, if you had a show called Dual Military and one person had no military experience, how can you have a fair compare and contrast? And that's what it's supposed to be about. So I knew Dave didn't have a lot of experience. Dave's experience was he spent 1.5 years making home movies in his backyard. And at that time, I had 20 years of experience with my school, teaching real people in real wilderness. And we're being compared as equals in an edit room in New York City. Is that fair? No. Did I eat a lot of crow? Yes. Was I willing to do that? Yes. Why? Because I can control myself, and I knew that I could teach, instead of 12 clients at a time, millions of people. I could teach, no, don't drink your pee, don't do this, do it this way, and it made a real difference. And I'm really, really happy I did the show because of the feedback I've gotten from fans, especially kids. One of my biggest fan bases, Art, I know you mentioned kids before we were on.
We have young people that listen to this show, yes.
Yeah, I had the most fan mail I had was from 5 to 9-year-old little girls who watched the show. And they were so turned on, and they told me how they catch frogs too, and they go barefoot, and they go hiking with their dad. And I had families call me up that would go camping for the first time because they watched the show. We had grandmothers watching the show with her grandkids. It was supposed to be a demographic of like 18 to 35-year-olds, male, of course. That's the demographic Discovery was shooting for. But it was so much more than that. And so there's a lot of crappy things that happened to me for sure, but it did a lot of good. And I'm glad I was on the show, at least until the drama started. And I had a blast on season 1. It was my dream job arc that turned into a nightmare. But that was just a pure lack of leadership and a lack of integrity, which can destroy anything. And you know that. You've been around the block.
I have.
Experience.
I have. Is it true, trying to lighten the moment for a second, that you're the only person in Arizona with licensed catch fish actually with your hands?
I believe so, yes.
No kidding. A license?
It is illegal, yeah. I think they call it literally a license. It was a scientific collection permit, because I am talking from you. I'm talking to you now from my office at Yavapai College, where I've taught survival skills for 21 years, and they treat me really well, and so I continue to teach for them. And yeah, so on these courses with the schools, I have a permit to catch fish with my hands.
All right, excellent. I love a frank interview, and we sure are getting that. My guest is Cody Lundin. He was, for I think 4 seasons, on Dual Survival on the Discovery Channel. And he sounds a little upset. Passionately upset. Passionately bitter.
All right, we'll leave Art Bell and Cody Lundin from Dual Survival there for tonight. We will pick up the interview tomorrow night, which will be our January 1st into 2nd episode of Midnight in the Desert / of course, part 3 of From Day 1, Day 31. Let's just finish out a few last items before we do rack away for the end of Day 30. Remember, if you are looking, make sure you do plan your resources accordingly to maximize what you can get out of them before a task completes and vanishes away from you. Whether it was the week that just ended, or Winter's Tale and the rest of Winterfest, that will be completing the course next week. And definitely the holiday every day, make sure you get what you want out of it before you let it reset each day. We'll finish through the what we can at least set up or claim already of the Asgard season ticket. Okay, so that's going to be it there. So as we've left the Great American Southwest, we go to the Great American Midwest to wrap up Day 30. Of course, make sure you do like, share, and subscribe. Get us to those goals of both Nexters and YouTube. 5,000 views for Boxy, 1,000 subscribers for YouTube, and I would really love to see you guys get me to a 20% to that goal for New Year's Day. We are above 18%. We are getting there. I'd love to see you guys make that happen. Get to 20% by the 1st of January. Again, still can get that crypto to get your free purchases in Dominion. Coinbase.com/join/CParsley. $10 free crypto, and I believe today's the last day you can still get in on that Christmas $1 million pile for signing up as well. 2-minute lessons, 1 question answers in Coinbase Earn to get even more crypto. And yes, Nexters does take cryptocurrency as a method of payment, whether you want to get Valkyrie favors, Emeralds, which is on a 4x sale right now, or anything else you would like. Until then, of course, we will be back with part 1 tomorrow. And remember, as always, it is a new world to release the Krakens. Have a great day. See you tomorrow.